Well, good morning, everybody. Today we're set for some extremely intense and provocative discussion. There is an elephant in a room of issues which are seldom addressed, seldom discussed, and which are never solved. Well, today, this will be our quest. Now, to get things underway, I'd like to ask Amanda.
Thank you. And just on behalf of HK, thank you all for coming today, and also to Paul for allowing us to host you. What we've done this year is really look at the interrelated causes between infrastructure and capital projects and what can actually go wrong there. And really, mega-disruptors affecting around 40 to 50% of those projects in all of the sort of sub-areas that we've looked at. So 5 key areas. So really contract-related conflicts, so what happens within the contract itself, how speed to build can actually affect the disputes in terms of the client's anxiousness to get things done, and we all understand that, but what does that come at a cost? Behavioural factors, so actually how sort of culture can really play a part in terms of project success, and where there's skill gaps. And for the first time, we've actually pulled in environmental risks, which we see very much as one of the key themes kind of coming through. How do we really start to look at getting that change of scope managed early, getting that early contractor involvement, and also how do we manage the design better as we move forward?
How are effectively bureaucrats and civil servants incentivized relative to private developers? I can get anybody in a room and get them in the room with you guys. We can pretend to talk nice, but if you got a bureaucrat whose primary mission is don't lose my job, not deliver on time or get a piece of the profit, he or she is not really going to be motivated to cooperate, right? How do we address this behavioral cultural issue?
So I'm fascinated by Greg's remark, though, because I know that it's primary research, right? You'll never get more primary than research in this report, but it's a very good point. How deep does it go?
Yes, so in the Middle East, we looked at 480 projects. These are basically problem projects where there has been cost overrun, where there has been time overrun. For example, we see a lot of owners or employers going to the lowest tender, which is
lower than that.
Which is so we start from award stage till the handover of that contract, and these are the problems which we highlighted.
So we end up inheriting problems that are deep set right from the outset, and it's the only time you get collaborations when people feel secure in our own companies, in our own businesses, contractually. Anytime, in any relationship. The challenge is somebody already does it. Somebody will do it. If you turn the job down, somebody will always do it. And unless we can get to this region where we can have a single voice and actually start stopping this, you'll never break that pattern of behaviour.
That's one of the things, Paul, I think, in terms of what Crux provides is data. And if you've got data, you can educate. And I think, one of the things that would be really great is if we can use that data to help educate the client. So it's exactly to your point, Greg. It's like, how are we going to change the behaviours of the race to the bottom? Please learn the lessons of the past to help you define a better future.
Some of the things we see is that, if you've got a client and you've got a design and you get to that schematic stage, and you advise the client what they should do, maybe they just don't understand the process. They don't understand a week's delay in design deliberation could have a 6-week impact on production.
I think there's a question.
Faysal, I think you might be able to answer Greg's question head on, because I know that in certain cases you have an open door to government, and I wonder to what extent you can drive the whole nature of the very process that Greg is talking about.
Yes, we have, I would say, to a certain extent, some very good close relation to some of our biggest clients, but sometimes they come too late. We try as much as possible to not necessarily educate, but work together, whether it's with data or previous practice to say, okay, if we take this route, you will avoid this and this and this. Luckily, sooner or later, you will find someone at a certain level that will listen and you'll be able to influence.
You're talking about best practice, which is paramount, isn't it?
Can I
Such
just
a
pick up
powerful-
that point as well?
Do
Just going back
please.
to Greg's point,
Do
because I think
please.
the principle, if you distill down what you just said, is the concept of talking to the people who employ us, all our organisations, is irrelevant because they don't have the power to make the decisions to do it better. And therefore, that the key aspect of, and it's not just a construction or a real estate perspective, it's everything at the moment, is we need to talk at the highest level to show them the benefit
Absolutely.
of doing things differently. If you look at procurement for the ministries of defence around the world, it's grossly inefficient because everyone is afraid of doing things, not taking an initiative. And therefore, the only way we can change this fundamentally is as a built environment profession, we need to go to the Crown Prince or the Crown Prince's private office. There is a light at the end of the tunnel because governments around the world have also recognised this. But the key issue for us is getting more people into the region who are qualified. So we need to make this region attractive to more people. And we keep saying this to the government. You must pay on time because the world is not devoid of projects. We can deploy those resources elsewhere around the world. So it's a competitive set. And that's the message we've got to get over to the governments here.
I know they say, Amanda, that the best presentation is the one that turns into a conversation. Well, yours turned into a conversation between you were like
that's the best
30%
presentation.
through. So shall we
To be honest,
do carry on?
to be honest,
yeah.
I'd rather we had the conversation.
Fantastic.
I actually
Yeah.
think that's the heart of this. So,
Yeah.
and I wanted to bring Kevin in because I think, how do we get sort of that design more secured up front earlier?
We were squeezed tremendously. If you take a look at what the design stage is versus construction and kind of an overall development cycle, where, we might be 6 months, A to Z in there, 18, 24 months. And so an extra week of design is a huge difference, but a week in construction isn't going to make that much of a difference. So we're trying really hard to just challenge and not sign up to programs that are unrealistic, that are, a suicide mission from the beginning. We'll just decline. A lot of our projects are K-12 education. They have a September deadline and when these assets need to be open, because if they're not, then you've lost a whole year to do that.
I can't help but, so sorry to interrupt, I can't help but think of a point, Nicholas, that you made earlier and you made, Faysal, whereby, it's all well and good at the top. I think particularly here in the UAE and I suspect also in KSA, the people at the top truly, truly know what they're doing. It's the people in the middle. And I think it's that secondary and tertiary tier that is the problem. I think that's the problem.
Maybe that's where Middle East Consultant can influence. Get
Perhaps
the word out there.
it can only... Thank you all for what's already been a very...
We're just totting up nicely.
We're only warming up. We're only warming up.
Boy, have we just changed the narrative in terms of the conversation that we've just had. Really sort of like looking at how we all know what the issues are. We all know what the opportunities are to actually change the dial, to avoid the cost overruns, to avoid the delays that are happening in construction projects. But it's really how do we come together as a group, both in terms of educating the client, but then bringing together the contractor, the designer, and all as a consultant team. Let's learn the lessons from the past so that we don't have to suffer in terms of that cost and time overrun. And let's build that into the early contractor stages by getting early contractual involvement, making sure that the influence of the C-suite clients is actually filtrating down to the lower levels and we're making the right decisions when it comes to procurement.